Everyone, this is Chris from Green Bay, and I have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Rolf Lulloff, who is one of our co-founders of our organization, as well as one of our lead coaches at the Brain Center. So Dr. Lulloff is a retired orthopedic surgeon, and he graduated from the University of Wisconsin School of Medicine in 1967. He completed his internship at the Utah Medical Center in 1968, and then in 1972 completed his residency at the Wisconsin Medical Center in Madison. He joined the West Side Clinic here in Green Bay in 1974, which then continued on to be Prevea Health. Dr. Lulloff currently is leading our coaching program, and he has so much wonderful information to share with you all today. Dr. Lulloff.
Thank you, Chris. It is indeed an honor to be talking to all of you today. It was just about 13 months ago that I presented to the Wisconsin Parkinson's Association meeting in Brookfield, giving a keynote address that was entitled "The Importance of Mind and Body Balance." Today, we will be focusing on making our brains better. What we can do to make them better, how we can make them better, and why we do things to make them better, and who can benefit from these things. The answer is a resounding yes. We can all benefit from doing these things, whether we have a brain disorder such as Parkinson's disease or not, whether we are a care partner or not. All of us can benefit from making our brains better. Our disclaimer is that this is information presented to you and shared for your knowledge so that you can make appropriate decisions regarding your health in conjunction with your healthcare providers. This is not meant to be a substitute for your healthcare. The Brain Center of Green Bay and our staff are not your doctors or other healthcare providers, and any treatment that you do should be discussed with your healthcare providers. But we are here to help educate, to teach, and to guide you. We are a nonprofit organization, but we are committed to making brains better throughout all of life and increasing individual and societal awareness and taking action to utilize this information. My story: I'm a Badger, born and raised in Dodgeville, Wisconsin, 40 miles west of Madison. I happen to be a bone doctor, orthopedic surgeon, but I have a very strong family history of Alzheimer's disease. My mother, my maternal grandparents, two of my mother's four sisters, and my only brother all developed and died with significant Alzheimer's disease in their 70s or 80s. I happen to have the genetic marker that increases my risk for it. I am 80. Do I have my senior moments? Yes, I do. But I'm doing everything I can to maintain my brain health for a long time. I attended UW-Madison, both undergraduate school and 4 years of medical school. And I met my wonderful wife, Ann, that summer that I was starting medical school. She just graduated from UW as a medical technologist. We got married 51 weeks after our first date. Little did we know that 12 years later, she was going to have the first symptoms that led to her 45-year battle with Parkinson's disease. Annie, as I love to call her, and I were so blessed with 56 and a half years of a wonderful marriage, including 3 children, 8 grandchildren, and a life together with so many great times, despite the Parkinson's. Annie's and my long journey with her disease taught us so much about challenging her brain disorder. We committed to making a lifelong difference in that disease, and indeed continue on to try to make a difference for so many that are afflicted. So how do we prepare to make our brains better? We must know ourselves. After all, we are all different. And if we don't understand how we are different, then how can we fine-tune doing the things that we have to do so that we take the steps to make our brains better? Yes, we are indeed all different. Sometimes those differences are very important, and sometimes they aren't. We're different because of the genes that we inherited from our parents are different. The environmental exposures that we have had in our lives are different. The illnesses and injuries that we've had in our lives make us all different. And thus, our needs are different. And our likes, our dislikes, and our abilities are different. Let's talk about the health factors that potentially affect us and how important they can be for many of us. We will emphasize the top 5 of these because of how common and how important they are. Diabetes mellitus, especially type 2, which is the adult, usually the adult form of diabetes, is very common. About 37 million people in the United States are diabetic like that. But what is also very worrisome is what's called insulin resistance, which is really diabetes. Between 90 and 1 million people in the United States are insulin resistant. This means that they are at increased risk to develop diabetes. And these people will become diabetic if they don't aggressively treat the changes that they've had. What's also of great concern in being diabetic or pre-diabetic is that it's often associated with obesity. It's often associated with what's called dysmetabolic syndrome, which we're going to talk about. It's also associated with developing what's called fatty, F-A-T-T-Y, liver disease. And it's often associated with coronary artery disease and heart attacks. Some statistics. Obesity and being significantly overweight is epidemic in the United States. 35% of adults and 10% of children in the United States are significantly overweight. Those statistics should not surprise you when you learn the fact that obesity in the United States was found in less than 1% of adults. If you look back from the year 1900 to 1920, more than 100 years ago, that figure is now 40% in Green Bay zip codes. I happen to live in zip code 54301. That's on the east side of Green Bay, and the incidence of obesity is over 40% in adults. And no surprise, obesity increases the risks for diabetes, hypertension, fatty liver disease, heart attacks, but also increases our risk of brain disorders, dementia, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and similar diseases. 40 million Americans have what's called dysmetabolic syndrome, a combination of at least 3 of these things: an elevated waist circumference, in other words, extra fat in your stomach, elevated triglycerides, high blood pressure, insulin resistance, and actually a lower level of the healthy cholesterol, high density lipoproteins. I suspect that many of you have not heard of fatty liver disease. Our livers are a most important organ in our body. Not only do they supply the healthy, simple fuels that supply the normal energy for the trillions of cells throughout our body, including our brain cells. But if we have been eating too many carbohydrates, especially simple sugars such as glucose and fructose, and if we've been eating too many unhealthy fats, and we don't burn all those up by being physically active and exercising, our livers actually store those unneeded calories as fat. Too much stored fat, such as fatty liver disease, and that extra spare tire around our waistline makes our livers sick. The liver fails and can lead then to not only fatty liver, but cirrhosis, which is fibrosis of the liver, and liver failure, and unfortunately, early death. How common is fatty liver today? In the United States, 35% of adults have fatty liver disease, and 10% of kids do. And usually you can tell who has it by taking a look at them and notice their size. Wake up, America, wake up, world, because it's just as big of a problem in the rest of the world. How real is all of this? Let me tell you my quick personal story. When I was in medical school, I started to put on a little extra weight, studying hard, no time to exercise, and being married to a wonderfully good cook and wonderful wife, Annie, and dealing with the expected stress of medical school. So I started to run 1 or 2 miles about 3 times a week. I felt better, had less stress, slept better, learned faster, and our happy marriage was even much more happy. Fast forward to my 30s and 40s, now settled down in Green Bay, practicing orthopedic surgeon, having 3 wonderful kids and a very happy marriage. I started to run marathons. Life is good. Yet my blood pressure continued to go up, or was starting to go up. The LDL, the bad cholesterol, was creeping up every year. And then in my 50s, I had to take pills to lower my blood pressure and to lower my bad cholesterol. I watched my diet carefully. I continued to run, but not marathons, and continued to take blood pressure pills and cholesterol lowering statins. Fast forward to my early mid-70s, my annual physical, and I was found to be insulin resistant. I carefully trained and actually ran the Boston Marathon at age 72, trying to help all these bad things in my health. All of a sudden, I put everything together. I connected the dots. What was my father's story? My father, who was never overweight, never a heavy alcohol drinker, always physically active. He took care of himself, became insulin insulin-dependent diabetic when he was in his mid-70s. And then he was found to have cirrhosis of the liver, which most likely came from his diabetes, which created his fatty liver. And he actually died age 78 of liver failure. All of this, again, despite the fact that he was never overweight and always physically active. Furthermore, his mother, my grandmother, became insulin-dependent diabetic when she was 84. A tough German lady, never overweight, always physically active. She made it to 96. I strongly suspect that both my dad and my grandmother had genetic insulin resistance. Therefore, I think I do too. But that makes me at increased risk of coronary artery disease and of a heart attack. And indeed, testing shows that I have a calcified main artery in my coronary arteries. But further testing showed that there was no blockage. So the blood flow supplying my heart was good. How did I dodge all these bullets? I think because I was always physically active, watched my diet, never was overweight, but also for me, running. I kept running, and I still do. Is running for everybody? Absolutely not. Just because I run does not mean that any of you should start running if you haven't been. Check with your doctors, get clearance. We are all different. Therefore, we must know ourselves. Knowing ourselves means understanding our brains. Our brains are amazing. They supply our memory. They supply our thinking. They supply our mood. And they supply our decision-making called executive function. All of which makes us uniquely who we are. I mentioned earlier that all of these illnesses and conditions that sneak up on us can contribute to brain disorders, such as Alzheimer's disease and Parkinson's disease. Alzheimer's disease is the commonest neurodegenerative disease, affecting over 6 million Americans. Parkinson's disease is the second commonest neurodegenerative disease, affecting 1.5 million Americans. These are really quietly occurring, but attacking so many people, problems. So we're going to talk about these brain disorders a little bit. What are dementias? Dementias are confusion kind of problems with our brains. They are a chronic and frequently persisting disorder of mental processes. They can be caused by disease or from injury, and they affect our memory, our personalities change, and they impair our ability to reason. On the bottom of the slide, you see 2 imaging studies of the brain. On the left shows a normal brain. The same kind of study on the right shows an Alzheimer's brain. All the different colors show intensity of abnormality or lack thereof. Is there any doubt that somebody with significant Alzheimer's disease, that their brain isn't working? What causes the brain not to be working? I'm going to introduce a name to you called proteinopathies. This is a pathology of proteins. What are proteins? A normal chemical in our body, normal chemicals that function not only as structural units of the cells and the tissues in our body, but also proteins are hormones that affect all parts of our body and in our brains. Some of these proteins are neurotransmitters, which are the chemicals that transmit messages from one cell to another cell at what are called synapses. There are also chemicals, proteins, that are neurotrophins that stimulate our bodies to work and our brains to work. These are chemicals. They can contribute to forming new brain cells and to make those brain cells work well and communicate with other brain cells. And a good example is brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF. Not only does brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which is made by our muscles when we exercise, stimulates our brain to form new cells and new connections. Good stuff for us. The proteinopathies are abnormal proteins, that the normal protein changes. It changes due to something that happens to it. And that might be exposure to a toxin like Roundup, exposure to an abnormal poisonous substance that can develop in blue-green algae. We have blue-green algae in all the lakes in Wisconsin and most of the lakes in Wisconsin and in the Fox River in Green Bay in August, because the warm water grows the algae, and the algae creates what you can sometimes smell, and you can certainly see it. Abnormal poisons. And those poisons, when they get into our brains, attack the proteins and turn them into abnormal proteins and cause our cells in the brain to not work. Examples of these are prion diseases. We see abnormal prions in Alzheimer's disease. The protein there is called amyloid beta and tau, two common proteins, but they're twisting abnormally due to aging, due to injury, or due to exposure of certain toxins. The abnormal protein in Parkinson's is alpha-synuclein. That protein, when it clumps up together, creates what are called Lewy bodies. Lewy bodies are always seen with Parkinson's, and a similar dementia called Lewy body dementia. Again, due to accumulations of the alpha-synuclein, which create Lewy bodies. Is it any wonder that these normal brain cells are no longer normal when there's all sorts of junk, garbage within the cell due to the abnormal proteins? There are other abnormal protein diseases. Mad cow disease in cattle, and for those deer hunters, chronic wasting disease. These are all similar diseases that destroy the brain. What causes these proteins to be abnormal? Are they the cause of the problem? Well, they're the result of the problem, whether it's the protein that's the problem or the poison, the toxin that got into it that turned the protein around. And there are people that have abnormal proteins in their brain without disease, although that's unusual. And there are some abnormal proteins that are in some ways beneficial, that they might be helping attack the brain disorder. There's a lot of research going on. We don't have all the answers. Yes, we are looking for the magic pill. One of the interesting things is that lifestyle and making your brain healthy lessens the chance of the proteinopathy and these disorders. So how can we help our brains? Okay, we have to keep all of the players involved in our brains healthy. Okay, who are the players? Well, we are all players in taking care of our brains, but we also frequently will have others that help us. We call those care partners. When Anne had her 45 years of Parkinson's, she was a care partner for herself, but I became a care partner for her. And actually, she was always a care partner for me because she was the most wonderful wife, and she taught me so much about her nasty disease. So we as players have to motivate ourselves to take the actions to maximize our brain and our body. We have to do that now. And we have to continue to act and adapt to our needs and the challenges we will face throughout our lives. What we do when we're young can help be healthier when we're older. We can't reverse what's happened up until this morning, but we can change what we can do from then on. Now, let's quick fast forward to another definition of players. Who are the players for our brain? Well, obviously the brain is the player for itself, but also our bodies are the player for ourselves. If you have a healthy heart, that's also healthy for your brain. If you have a healthy liver, it's also healthier for your brain. And if we're taking care of our brain, it makes us take the steps that make the rest of our body healthy. So we are all care partners for ourselves. And we need, on occasion, extra assistance in dealing with life and its challenges, other illnesses and diseases that come along that we've talked about already. By working together, two care partners can get more done than two individuals working separately. Because as care partners, we learn from one another. Our brains are incredible, phenomenally complex in all they do. But what's striking about our brains is also how automatic they are. When you think about, you're sitting here listening, are you thinking about, okay, I've got to memorize this. Oh, I got an itch on my nose. Am I going to itch my nose? Oh, then I'll forget about what I'm listening to. I mean, the list goes on and on. Our brains are working 24 hours a day, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But the interesting thing about our brains, it used to be thought that our brains didn't change. That's no longer true. Our brains have neuroplasticity, the ability to change, to reorganize what it's putting in, what it's remembering, what it's going to do. This changes constantly. Good example. What did you have for breakfast this morning? I imagine you can remember what you had. I want to know what you had for breakfast a year and a half ago on Wednesday morning. Now, you probably had the same thing every day, so you could probably say yes or no. But I want to know, do you remember what you had 3 weeks ago for dinner on Tuesday night? The odds are you probably don't. We remember things early on when they occur. We remember most interesting things when they occur, but we don't remember everything because our brain has some limitations in how much it can remember. The changing of our brain is the process that is dynamic. It's going on all the time, 24 hours a day. Now, when we're awake, we're aware of it. When we're sleeping, the body actually, and we'll talk about that with sleep, gets rid of a lot of the stuff that we don't need to remember. So neuroplasticity is the process of changing and adapting. All learning, all training, all rehabilitation. Our brains control our actions, our reactions, and our movements, and allow us to think, to feel, and have memories. Again, all the things that give us our unique personality. So how can we deal with making our brains healthier? There are certain pillars of support for brain health, and we shall talk about those now. There are 6 main pillars that we're going to talk about, but they all interact with each other because what's good for one of the pillars will frequently help some of the other pillars. The key pillar is what we eat and what we drink, what we take in to our body to supply quality fuel and energy. There are trillions of cells in our body. They're all little energy factories, but they've got to have fuel. And so a lot of things in our support system, our intestinal tract, our livers, our blood circulation, all those things are critically important in supplying that superb fuel and energy that we eat and drink, provided it's healthy. We are all what we eat. We need to supply our bodies with a healthy group of fuel and energy sources. Those fuel sources help the cells in our body to repair each other when they're damaged, to grow new cells, and to make our brains and our bodies work better. Proteins and fats are a combination of chemicals that we eat with the food that we eat and drink that can be healthy but cannot be healthy. The healthiest proteins and fats are pasture raised or wild caught, where they're not exposed to toxins and poisons in fertilizer and such things. And carbohydrates, the healthiest ones are colorful and they're non-starchy. And we have to limit sugars and glutens, especially sugars, because that contributes to our risk for obesity and diabetes and the other medical conditions we talked about. What are examples of good brain boosting foods? Green leafy vegetables, colored vegetables, broccoli, the colored peppers, spinach, carrots. Colors are good. Fruits, similarly. Berries. Those colored berries, not only are the skins very nutritious because of the chemicals the skins have, but the carbohydrates that are in those tend to be healthy as well. Coconut oils, olive oils are especially good. They supply healthy fats. Fats can be turned into ketones, which are excellent fuel for cells. But the fats they're unhealthy fats, but the healthy fats can be also turned into structural units in the cells of our body, just like proteins are. Avocados, if you can get them at the right time of ripeness, are very good. Coffee, people that drink coffee tend to have a lower chance of Parkinson's. Dark chocolate is good. The sweet chocolates that are not dark are not nearly as good. And the omega-3 fatty acids are superb. Healthy salmon and healthy forms of fish and healthy oils, especially coconut oil. And we talked about the berries already. In addition to putting good fuel in us, we need to keep physically active. Physical exercise stimulates our brain. It produces the BDNF we talked about to produce new cell formation and healthier connections between our cells. It also, physical exercise slows the aging of our body and brain and has other benefits. It makes our bones stronger by decreasing osteoporosis. It makes our heart and blood vessels healthier, which are good for our brain and everything else. And physical exercise can help control high blood pressure. Physical exercise also boosts our energy and our mood. It combats stress, anxiety, and studies have shown that physical exercise done correctly will often be more effective than antidepressant medications. An added benefit is that if we exercise appropriately, our immune systems work better, and it's very unlikely that we'll have as many short-term illnesses and even chronic illnesses. We need to stimulate our brains with cognitive thinking stimulation. How do you do that? Physical exercise helps. Keep moving, moving, moving. Gardening is a combination of activities, of thinking what you're doing, but also of moving. Dancing, socialization, all that stuff is really, really good for us. And activities, participating and enjoying music is great stimulation to our brain. Annie and I found that with her Parkinson's, if she was having trouble moving and walking, we would stand up and we would prance to Neil Diamond. The rhythm was superb. We found ways to do those activities. Lifelong learning. Hopefully we're teaching you things today that helps your lifelong learning. Not only do we want to move, 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 we want to think, think, think. We want to stimulate, 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 and we want to learn, learn, learn. In social activities, service activities, volunteer, engage with people, get to know them, talk to them. And spirituality and meditation and religious support is very important. Annie and I found that. We found ways to turn a bad day into a good day. And often it was snuggling up, telling each other we loved each other, hugging, and praying. Sleep is very important because the brain flushes out the toxins and poisons and the metabolic wastes that we've accumulated. Some of that's just normal. We're going to have that just because all these cells are working hard to help us think and learn. But sleep also prunes the brain of unneeded and unused information, including trash. Not only metabolic trash, but the bad things. If we're stressed out with a problem and we haven't been able to deal with that problem, sometimes the brain will bring that up in a dream, and we will sometimes all of a sudden say, that isn't a big problem. And you've been solved of those worries and that stress. Adequate sleep keeps us healthy, mentally sharp, and able to deal with stress more effectively. People who don't get enough sleep tend to eat too much. Fatigue will interfere with attempts to exercise and the benefits of exercise. We want to avoid the potential of toxins, illness, and injuries. Illness and injuries can cause major short-term and occasional long-term setbacks due to the results of those injuries, the results of those illnesses. They hurt our brains. So you may think, say you have a broken hip, that this was just an injury to your bones. Your brain is injured too. Your brain has to start over and how to learn to walk again sometimes and how to go on with your life. And of course, you're worried about it then. So we have to avoid injuries. We also have to avoid infections as much as possible. Don't expose yourself to people with significant illnesses. We've learned that with COVID, and we're dealing with that with ongoing issues in the world today. But the toxic gases and chemical exposures are really at risk. So we have to be careful and try to avoid them. All of our brains, especially developing brains when we're younger, are susceptible and very vulnerable to chemicals and to food additives. So you want to eat healthy, starting from the time of your parents, the time of conception, all the way through our lives. And it's important to note, alcohol is a toxin, not only for our liver, but for our brains. So I don't have to tell you, you live in Wisconsin, the #1 state in the nation for alcohol consumption happens to be Wisconsin. Stress management. Over the long term, stress can be damaging to the brain. It can bring on significant mental health and substance use disorders, such as anxiety, depression, addiction. Yet mild controlled stress can stimulate us. So we want to get a good balance. How do you manage stress? Meditation can be helpful. Mindfulness, being aware of it, and trying not to let it upset us. Deep breathing exercises are not only good for our lungs and our hearts and our brains, they're good for stress management. And I should have started us all up with taking 10 deep breaths before we started today. So as soon as you get done here today, take 10 good deep breaths, and we should do it every 10 or 15 minutes. Music can be very relaxing and enjoyable, and Annie found that worked for us. And yoga and physical exercise is very helpful. Give me a 1 mile run, and I can tell you my brain works better. And if you can't handle it on your own, get some counseling to help. So what are our goals for health and wellness, and how do we achieve them? #1, take charge of your life. This is an active process. Don't just say, well, it's the way I am. And have a healthy supporting cast, the rest of your body, but also your social connections, your significant others, your care partners. Know yourself. Remember, we are all different, so you have to know your needs. And be appropriately physically active for you, and keep moving. Do it safely, but keep moving. And be cognitively active. Use your brain, train it, stimulate it. Be socially involved and active, and be spiritually active. I can tell you, when we dealt with the long-term 45 years of Parkinson's, Ann and I after a bad day, found that we had no more bad days. What did we do? We snuggled up to each other, said we loved each other. We said the Lord's Prayer. And at the end of the prayer, we said, God, you've so eminently blessed us. You've given us life on this wonderful earth. You've given us wonderful parents and family. Most of all, you've given us each other. And you've been with us on our journey. We prayed every night the rest of our life. We never had a bad day thereafter. And when God, in the end, said, Annie, you're going to sleep away peacefully now, she did, without pain, without suffering, in my arms at home. Most meaningful. And you need to do good nutrition. You need to fine-tune your nutrition for your needs. Minimize stress and avoid the toxins and the poisons and the insecticides and the weed killers, and eliminate bad habits. Being active. Do it, use it, or lose it. Critically important. So what are our goals? Maximize overall health and brain health and function. If we can't maximize it, hopefully we will prevent disease and disability. If we can't prevent it, hopefully we can delay it. If we can't delay it, hopefully we can minimize it. And hopefully we can slow it down, stop it, or reverse it. And if we can't do that, hopefully we can cure it. And if we can't do that, we adapt to it and challenge it so that we benefit from the body's natural healing potential, so that we can overall improve the quality of our lives and the lives of others and enjoy life. There are good sources of information that's on our website. These the second one on top, Sanjay Gupta, is a good general book on keeping our brain sharp. Wonderful book on sleep, Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. For Parkinson's disease, the foundation in Colorado, the Davis Finney Foundation, has wonderful education resources. Every victory counts, and every victory counts for care partners. These are available on the internet, free of charge to people. This is a wonderful organization, and they will sell, if you request, they will send you free of charge their latest books. They are top notch. These other books are good too. Next. So we are committed to making brains better. You can find us on the internet. These are the where you can contact us. And I'll be glad to answer questions. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.